everybody. Welcome to La Lista, a Latinx writers podcast. I'm your host, Ruben Mendive, and today we have a new guest here virtually from the East Coast, which I'm so excited about. So my first question is, I ask my guests to introduce themselves, so your name and how you identify for the people at home.
Hey guys, my name is Adrian Salvador. He, him, his. I'm a gay Venezuelan American Jewish born and raised in New York City.
And so my follow-up question is always, where are you from? So like, what's the short version? What's the long version?
Where I'm from, I'm basically from Queens, New York. I grew up all over Queens. So Queens is the short version. The long version is I've been around. Grew up in Glendale. I was born in Elmhurst. I'm in Rego Park now. Lived in Princeton, New Jersey for a couple of years, like elementary. I'm not sure if that counts. And then I moved back here second grade. And then I moved to Florida for 3 years. That was really interesting because it was 8th to 10th grade. So I feel like during that time you're like going through puberty. I came out in Florida, so that was like a lot. It was just a mess. And then I decided to move back to New York at 16 to pursue acting.
And I always like to get a sense of family history. So like, what's your parents' story?
My parents were both in separate marriages before they had me. So my mom was in a marriage. She had my half-sister, half-brother. Then my dad had 2 half-brothers on his side. And then they got divorced, and then they met up about 18 years later, and then they had me. So my mom had me pretty late, and late in quotation marks, because I don't think 39 is that late. So my parents are extremely supportive of like following my dreams and being kind of like just supportive in chasing the arts. My dad, on the other hand, that's my mom, because she's always in the creative side. She loves arts, pretty much does like event planning and anything like creative and hands-on. And then my dad, on the other hand, he's into like law. He went to Columbia, so he's very business oriented and wasn't super happy about me pursuing film instead of law like he did. So it took him a minute to get comfortable with the idea of me going into film, and he understands why it's so important for me, just to like raise more representation for Latinos. My mindset kind of changed from like, oh, I want to be famous, to like, oh no, I need to do this for our community. And that's just like from being a teenager to like a young adult now.
Yeah. And, I'm curious about Queens, because I've never been to New York. So like, how did your family end up in Queens, and how would you describe Queens to someone that's never been there?
Yeah, so Queens is a huge melting pot. It also depends on what area of Queens you are in. It's very big. It's not like the city, like Manhattan, where you have you have your districts in Queens, obviously, like Jackson Heights, Astoria, Long Island City, Rego Park, Ridgewood, and each district has like their set of people. So it depends. Queens can be very suburban, where you would actually need a car, or it can be very city-like, depending on what district you're in. I'm in Rego Park, so it's like borderline suburban, borderline like city. Like you can walk around and do stuff. Jackson Heights, huge like city-like area. You walk around and can do a lot of things at once. Same with Astoria. If you go deeper into Queens, like Middle Village, Ridgewood, you definitely need a car there. So it honestly depends. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, how did your family end up there?
Okay, yeah. So my family, so my dad's into real estate. He was a lawyer for real estate. So basically, when we were moving back, my mom ended up coming to Queens first. So she was like already like rooted here. She grew up in Elmhurst, Richmond Hill, Forest Hills, around there. And then she like hopped around a lot. And then my my dad, when they ended up meeting together, he ended up living with her. And then I guess they just like Queens because it's still like suburban. It's not, and back in the 80s, I mean, Manhattan was dangerous to live in. It's not like how it is now today. So I think that helped out too with like wanting to stay rooted in Queens.
Yeah. And, I'm a city kid. I grew up in Chicago, and I feel like a lot of people I talk to are from like more suburb or like it's like a different experience. So I'm curious about like what your childhood was like.
Yeah, so I grew up in Glendale, like at the time where I was in my childhood um, age. So it wasn't very city-like. It was suburban. You had to, I mean, I walked to school and stuff like that, hung out with friends after. So it wasn't like you needed a car. And of course, there's like public transportation, like the MTA with buses and stuff like that. So we would like go around. But for the most part, we ended up staying in Queens. We wouldn't really venture out to the city at like 12, just because it is scary, just being on your own in the city and not knowing much. And then when I moved to Florida and then moved back at 16, that's when I was like going to school in the city in high school. And I would just venture out for hours and hours in the city, even alone. Like my friends thought I was crazy just for being like a little tourist, and just like wanting to get to know the cities. And now that honeymoon phase is over, so I'm like over New York at this point.
I like to ask people about their high school years, so like 14 to
Mhm.
18. I like
Yeah.
to frame it in like, who were you? Who were you pretending to be? And how did people see you during this time?
Yeah. So my story is really interesting when it comes to high school. I got the best of both world experience, I guess, because I did go to school in Florida. I started high school in Florida. So ninth and 10th grade, I was in Florida. I went to Coral Glades in Coral Springs. It's like half an hour from Fort Lauderdale. Just to reference for anybody wondering, which I doubt. But it was a very campus-like high school. So it was big. I mean, we were given like 10 minutes to get to class because it was just so big that you had to like walk around. We had like an auditorium. It was very different than transferring halfway. And then I went to a fashion design high school in Lower East Side of Manhattan called New Design, and that was just like a huge, I guess, culture shock in a way, because I was not only surrounded by more people who look like me, Latinos, Black, and it just a whole diverse school instead of Florida where it was just predominantly white. So it was more comforting going to school in New York City. Plus, I got the fashion aspect of learning how to sew and stuff like that, stuff that we couldn't do in Florida. I got like a specialized, I went to a specialized high school here. And then being a teenager in the city, I say less. I mean, we basically could do whatever we wanted to, walk around and like venture out, go to events. And act reckless, I guess.
So what'd you do after high school? Like, did you have a plan? Did things go according to plan?
Yeah, so I was dead set on NYU ever since I was in middle school. I was like NYU or nothing. And my dad was very like, you need to go to college. My mom, on the other hand, was more like, you do what you want to do and I'll support you. So I knew I didn't want to go to college anywhere else than NYU. Then around junior year, when we submitted applications, I got rejected, which was the worst experience of my life. I sobbed for like a week. Like I was dead set on NYU. It was my dream school. And then to just like not get it at all was devastating to me. And then being 17 at the time, I'm like, my life is over. I was so dramatic looking back at it. Like I was literally sobbing when the following day at school, and my teachers were like trying to calm me down because everybody just knew how much I was dead set on NYU. But through So I ended up moving back to New York to pursue acting because I was accepted into this program called Urban Arts the following summer. So my friend from while I was in Florida, my friend saw that I was interested in acting, and she basically said, "Hey, you should join this program called Urban Arts." And I ended up applying. I don't know how I got it because it was meant for New York residents, and at the time I was living in Florida, so I like slipped in through the cracks because I would visit every so often, like every summer, to New York. So I got into the program, fell in love with it just because the resources they had. We would my first summer, I don't know how, but I was acting in like 3 scenes for a play. I was in a musical, got a vocal coach. Like it was just a very cool experience. And Urban Arts was a performing arts after school program, basically meant for low income students who lived in New York City, just to like give them something to do. So we had dance, film, acting. They had a coding, photography, poetry. It was just a mix of different art forms that students in New York City could have access to learning more about. Thank God that I got into that program because it really, I fell in love with it that one summer that I did it, that I wanted to move back and to continue in the fall. So everybody who went to Urban Arts went to New Design, which was that fashion design high school. So during the week I was doing fashion design, and then on the weekends I was doing acting. So with that freedom, I got to meet a lot of cool people at Urban Arts who cared about their students. And through that program, I was introduced to Marymount Manhattan College. A couple of the alumni went to that college, which was how I eventually got into HEOP for that school. And if you don't know what HEOP is, it's basically a higher education opportunity program. It basically allows New York State residents to stay in New York and afford college. So it's basically got full ride to go to Marymount, which was where I ended up going to college. Long story short.
And how would you describe your college experience? Like, what was it like? What do you think you got out of it?
My college experience was another huge culture shock, just sitting in the room from going to a high school that was fully diverse with people who looked like me to being the only Latino in the room and nobody looking like me. So it definitely felt uncomfortable most of the time. I did get a lot of stuff from it because since it was a small liberal arts college, I was able to start up a lot of things. So my mentor, so HEOP would pair you up with a mentor as a freshman, just because you're new to college. It might not be easy for a lot of students who are low income and not knowing how to like going from a private college institution. So we got paired up with a mentor, and my mentor was Kelly and Brian. They were both in film, so it matched perfectly with me. Kelly was president of the Cinemaniacs, so she had a film analysis club and then passed it down to me when she graduated. I was given the freedom to basically do what I wanted with it. So I ended up turning that film analysis club into a film production club. And that's where my love for writing came about. We were basically producing our own short films. And then at the end of each semester, we would have a big film festival, basically, where we could invite our friends and family and they can see it. We were giving out awards. We got a red carpet. It was like making a big event out of our hard work. So each semester I would write my own short film and basically get to make what I wanted. And I did get a lot of great connections and close friends that I still get to work with today. So that's nice. I don't think I would have gotten that if I had gone to a bigger college like NYU. Definitely would have gotten lost. And now looking back at it, I'm happy that I ended up going to Marymount just because of the stuff I got to create and leave back for other students who are in Marymount right now.
And so, you mentioned that you were like sort of like on the acting route. So how did you also know that you wanted to like start writing and producing, and how did you get on like the filmmaking track?
Yeah. So so I got into writing through Urban Arts Partnership, which was that acting program. We were basically my first summer. Julia Grob, amazing acting teacher, she taught me a lot. Ended up moving out to LA because she was following her dreams of becoming a writer. So she had left. I met her that first summer, and she had gone to LA. And then we got that following fall. We got a new teacher, Athena Colon, who's an amazing actress. Shout out to Athena. Beautiful inside and out. So she taught me a lot about telling my story, and our acting program was called Life Stories. So it was basically giving the students freedom to write their own stories, and we would basically perform it in front of an audience for showcase at the end of every semester. So that's where my love for writing came about. I was also, my senior year, was also got to be the youngest student writer nominated to write for the 24-hour plays. So that was like a huge accomplishment. And then I was like, wow, people really like what I have to like share. Like they like my stories. So I ended up switching from an acting perspective into film just because I saw the freedom that I could have with wanting to write my own stories, producing it, and still getting to act in it. So any type of short film that I made myself the main character, which you have a lot of freedom. And Athena also taught me that actors don't really have much of a say. It's mostly the producer, director, person who's creating it. They have all the say. And I don't really like being told what to do. So I ended up going down the film route. And I also was noticing senior year, the lack of roles being made for Latinos. And I was hoping to change that because I knew as an actor, we don't really get say in anything. So definitely less with getting the control of what roles are being made for us. So I went ahead and wanted to do that.
Yeah, so let's segue into like after college. So like what'd you do then? Because it's like college
Yeah.
does a very good job of like
Yeah.
making us see what's possible. And then when you sort of
Yeah.
graduate, the reality sort of like kind of
Yeah.
hit you in the
Oh my
face. So
gosh.
so
Yes.
what was that like?
Yeah. So I graduated in 2019. So pretty recently. I'm still struggling like crazy. I did so many internships in college to avoid being unemployed after college. So I have like about 6 internships on my belt, which I don't even know how I was lucky enough to get that. Because it was so much, especially starting internships off as a freshman, it's not like recommended. So a lot of my opportunities were in media, a couple of film, like I was at BET for a year. And then graduating, I'm like, crap, nobody wants to hire me. So I kind of been doing my own thing. I did create my web series, which was based on my experience growing up in New York City and doing that move from Florida to New York. So that's where Connect 2 and 2 kind of came about. It was like based on me and my friend group at the time. And I was a huge motive for wanting to go to film to like pursue that web series and learn how to actually like create it. So my senior year, I ended up using that as my senior thesis project, which was a year-long film project, basically from pre-production to production to post. It ended up winning 2 awards for Best Produced and Audience Choice. And the Audience Choice really meant more than the Best Produced one, just because it is a series. So I'm like, yay, people like it. So I've just been focused on that full time since graduating. And I did kind of take a break after graduation just because it was so overwhelming. It was it was such a hard job to do, from the extent that I was doing it in. I mean, I did social media management, promoting, casting, promo shoots every month, campaigns, then the actual production, and then post-production, just doing that all alone, it was a big stress, and it was really bad for my health. I feel like I should start talking about it just because to just show the extreme of it, but like I got a bald spot and you could kind of see it, like how stressed I was that I got a bald spot on like my head, and thank God I could cover it. Thank God my hair was long enough because it was right before we actually started filming. So I can't imagine me being a lead with a bald spot. Oh my gosh. So yeah, my hair was lucky enough to cover it, and you could see it in one of the clips, which is embarrassing. I tried to like edit it, but I couldn't. So I took a break after graduating on Connect 2 and 2 for about 6 months, and then got back into like writing the full script since for school we could only do a 10-minute pilot. So it was about, I think I landed around 16 pages, 17 pages for like the script that I did in school. And now it's at a full 59 pages, so an hour-long drama. And then I've just been like reworking with a lot of other writers, reading and giving notes to each other. I've gotten really busy with writing. I'm on my 3rd series pilot right now. So, and then I just thought of a 4th series concept. And then I'm also working on 2 feature films. So just keeping busy on creating those, just because writing for me is hard to keep myself accountable, if that makes sense. Just like wanting to like sit down and like, okay, let's start. I feel like that's the hardest thing as a writer. Not so much the ideas. I feel like ideas come to you eventually, if you just don't think so hard about it. But like actually like sitting down and like forcing yourself, like, let's go, let's write, is hard. And I don't want to speak for all writers. I guess this is just me. So yeah, I've just been reworking my pilot for Connect 2 and 2 and my other series, but Connect 2 and 2 right now is like my top priority since I do want to act in it, and I don't know how long I'll be able to pass at 16. Hopefully for a minute, just because I've been told I have a young face. So definitely want to get this series picked up. There's nothing like it, and there's definitely a market for it. Plus, Latinx content is only growing right now for us. So definitely don't want to give up on it.
Yeah, and that's sort of how you first got on my radar through Connect 2 and 2. I saw it and I was like, I saw all the promos and like the shoots and everything looked like very professional. And I was like, okay, like who is this?
Thank you.
And then, but what also really appealed to me about it was, again, I'm a city kid. I grew up in the city, and a lot of teen shows are either like the 1% living in New York City, or like the upper middle class living in the white suburbs. Like it's very white, exactly. Very rich. So, so can you sort of talk about like the premise for Connect 2 and 2 and like why that story?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So moving to New York City at 16 was a huge like awakening, just because I never got to experience a city when I was little. I was just in Queens. So Connect 2 and 2 is basically about 6 Latinos growing up in New York City, dealing with economic issues, family, social drama, all while growing up in the chaos that is New York City. I feel like you could either get swept up in how hard it is to live here, especially as a minority, or you can thrive and really use that to your advantage. So I wanted to make a show that showcased like real city life. It's kind of like Euphoria meets Gossip Girl with a Project Runway twist, since they go to a fashion design high school. So the premise does revolve around New York City as like a character on its own, and then you have this 6 majorly different teens who are all pursuing their different careers. Some of them are a hot mess at 16, and then some of them are more put together. And yet they're dealing with adult real issues, not like the issues you see in Gossip Girl where it's like just so fake. I wanted to showcase like the real side. And I guess like some of the inspo I got was from Shameless, like seeing that family live low income household in Chicago and like the city. was like, oh, so I can make this. Like, this would actually be a good story to tell. So, and then I also wanted to showcase a range of different Latinos, from white Latinos to indigenous looking Latinos and even Afro Latinos. So the cast is it's a main cast of 6. So I wanted to do 2 white Latinos, 2 tan, and then 2 Afro, and like showcase like the ranges that there is for Latinx and what that means for us, and showing the different incomes we come from, our and then just like breaking stereotypes. A lot of us are made to look like we're uneducated or don't care about school, but these teens are already like building their businesses and brands and have a lot of talent and are actually really smart.
You know, that's what really impressed me about you, was that you had such a commitment to the story you wanted to tell, to the how it looked like I mentioned, like most people graduate college and sort of fall on their face. And I always tell people who just graduated, like, it's supposed to be hard. You're supposed to like be a little miserable, but also for you, I think you're already ahead of the game. And the reason I wanted to have you on was because there are people, Latinx people, making content that's producible, that can be sold and pitched. And I think it's up to us to really get behind those works and to like show there's an audience for it and show that there's a passion for it. And we're dying to hear these stories. So I'm curious about, like, have you had like any like industry experience with just trying to like pitch or like get this show off the ground?
Yeah, so I'm not represented by anybody. So I'm working on getting an agent right now. But I was fortunate enough to be mentored by a famous actor. I don't want to name drop, so I will not name him. But I met him through Urban Arts, and he's been mentoring me since basically I was a teen. And then the past 2 years, we grew our relationship through Connect 2 and 2, and he saw the vision that it had. So he's been setting up meetings with me with like actual executives, a couple from ABC, Amazon Studios, and then some smaller production companies. Everybody loves it and they see the value that it has. It just sucks that we're in a pandemic right now, so a lot of it was budget cuts and they can't buy it right now. I'm hoping that they'll change their minds when we're out of this, but I'm just really trying to get that one yes right now. And I mean, if these executives are saying I love it, then obviously somebody's gonna buy it eventually.
I like to ask about people's like Latinx identity, Latinidad. So like, you know, you mentioned that your family's from Venezuela. So like, what connection do you feel? I'm always curious about people who are like not immigrants, but like first, second generation. Like, what is that connection?
Yeah, so my connection is, so I'm basically a mutt, to say the least. My dad is a mix of Ecuadorian, Colombian, Jewish, Spanish, and so is my mom. My mom's Venezuelan, Colombian, Jewish, Spanish. I guess we all originate from Spain or like have a little bit of Spanish in us. But I grew up with my mom since my dad and my mom got separated when I was little. So I grew up with my mom's culture more and being raised Jewish and Venezuelan. So I kind of connect to that more. I label myself as Venezuelan, Venezuelan Jewish, American. That's just like the connection that I have. That's what I grew up with and that's what I know. So that's like where my Latinx identity falls between. I also love the term Latinx just because it's not specific to just one thing. It can be a flow of a lot of things. It's also not labeled as a gender, which Spanish language tends to label objects as masculine or feminine. And also Hispanic was a term that was made for us to be placed in a box, basically. So I don't know why people get so defensive about the word Latinx. It really does baffle me. Like they hate it with a passion.
It's a weekly Twitter fight, and I'm always like, yeah. We're doing this again, huh? Yeah, I think it's
you guys just don't get it.
And I think it's just that thing where, because my feeling was this, and a lot of things, it's like, now there's something new. Now we're progressing to something else. I don't understand people that try so hard to like hold on to like the past and the thing that like,
Yeah.
I don't know, just, but it's
Yeah.
like, if that's how you want to be, then go ahead, you know? I'm also curious about, you know, because like the stereotype for Latinx folk is like Catholic and
Mm-hmm.
like Christian. So like,
Mm-hmm.
so what is it like to like be Jewish? Like, and so like Latinx and Jewish, like tell me like
Ugh,
everything that comes with
it's
that.
it's such a mess trying to explain it to people, honestly, but I'm learning that there's millions of us like
Yeah.
that out, that are Jewish Latinx. So it's really hard, especially like with my actual like Jewish friends who are like, but you're Latino. Like that, how? Like what type of Jew are you? And then just like religion wise, like I'm just very connected to it more than I feel like actual Jews like label themselves as Jews but don't actually like practice it religion wise. And then my mom was like a heavy influence with that, just because I was raised so young with it. I think I stopped eating pork like around 7, so I'm just like that's all I know. It does get exhausting having to explain it. It's like you're not Latino enough for your Latino friends, or you're not Jewish enough for your Jewish friends. It's just like trying to find that balance, I guess, and like constantly having to like prove yourself. It's just a huge barrier. And I feel like a lot of that comes from TV. Whenever we do see Latinos in TV, it's very like Catholic. I mean, Jane the Virgin is like a huge factor of
Mm-hmm.
that and promoting it. But no, there's millions of us like this outside. You just haven't heard our stories yet.
Exactly. And yeah, so let's talk about the stories you like to tell. Like what are some of the themes, the topics, what are stories that are attractive to you that you feel like you're constantly telling?
All of my stories are main cast Latinos. Like that's just I don't understand Latinos who write for white people as like their main cast, especially when they have creative control over their stories. That just doesn't make sense to me. So that's been a huge motive in what I've been writing. I like to talk about themes like gentrification, gay Latinos, LGBT, just basically promoting us, kind of bending the stereotypes on like having us low income or immigrants. I want to stay away from those issues just because I feel like there's an overflow of those stories already, and I don't want to continue to perpetuate those stereotypes and just having us labeled as immigrants. I feel like especially like by now a lot of us are American citizens, so we should be hearing and seeing those stories. A lot of our families are self-made and are educated, are business owners. I want to tell those stories. Like my dad went to law school. He went to Columbia. Like, when have you ever seen that in TV? So a lot of that is just being constantly self-aware of like what I'm writing and is this helping our community or is this going against it? And I think that's like where my main focus in the stories I tell come from.
Yeah, and you know, I am always curious, like how did you get to that place though? You know, how did you like feel like this was
Yeah,
something that was important to you in your
yeah.
storytelling?
So I'm going to be honest, that didn't happen until recently when I went to 2019 New York Latino Film Festival. It was the first time I had ever seen other Latinos in film. It sounds crazy, but like I've never met so many people fighting the same fight. Um, Growing up, I hated myself being Latino, not seeing myself reflected in shows like Gossip Girl and 90210, even Shameless. Like it was just like white families, and white problems, and a lot of that really discouraged me, wanting to speak Spanish at home. There was a time where I refused to. I would avoid the sun to not get tan was another huge factor. I dropped my last name to Adrian Alexander senior year of high school and would just only go by that. And I didn't start changing it till last year, which is a huge difference. Like even when you see some of the pictures from Connect 212 on the slate, it says Adrian Alexander. So it was very recently till I went to New York Latino Film Festival and just saw a huge community of people like us, like fighting the same fight. And I'm like, wow, I don't feel so alone, because these past couple of years I felt extremely alone. Even in college, a lot of my classmates were white, and they just didn't understand why it was such a big deal. A lot of TV is just black and white, and it's not like Latinos. Our history is just never talked about. It's just very black and white, and I wanted to kind of change that and help that. Meeting so many Latinos right now, I'm realizing, wow, we're all in this together. So it's comforting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I interview a lot of Latinx writers. A lot of them are very much West Coast. I'm having trouble finding East Coast Latinx writers.
So am I. So hi.
So can you sort of talk about like the East Coast, New York, like Latinx film writing scene? Like what's your experience of it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, for New York, I feel like all there is here are directors. I don't get it. I'm like, where are the writers? Where are you guys? Or actors? It's just writers. I mean, it's just directors and actors. That's it. I've gotten fortunate enough to meet a couple of writers who are from here, but they all end up leaving to LA, which honestly, like, same. I'm like dying to move just because I'm so over New York and I want to experience something new. Yeah, I just feel like it's so hard to meet people, other writers who are from here.
Yeah. No, where are they? I don't know.
Hello, please
Uh,
DM me.
we sort of have talked about, your writing and what you like to write. And I know this is a big question for a lot of writers, but it's like, when did you start identifying as a writer?
Okay, yeah. So I still don't identify myself. I mean, I am a writer, obviously. I mean, I'm on my third series pilot. I guess I don't identify myself as a writer just because I haven't gotten staffed on a show or like have like a real credit. I feel like once you do that, you can officially call yourself like a professional writer. But I am comfortable saying that I am a writer once studio executives were like, I like your pilot. And I'm like, thank you. Or like they introduced me to somebody and they're like, meet this talented Latino writer, Adrian. And it's basically like forming a relationship, and just like hearing other people say it, I think it makes me feel more comfortable saying it. So I guess that really happened like this past year. So pretty recently.
I like to ask my guests who are the writers that they admire. So who are the people? These could be heroes, friends, peers, people you're creeping on Instagram.
Yeah. So Julia Grob was my first teacher when I moved back to New York. She was part of Urban Arts that first summer before she moved to LA. She's gone on to do a lot of cool shows for ABC, and right now she's on Mr. Iglesias, which is on Netflix. She's one of their staffed writers and has been for the past 2 years. So I admire her a lot. Just seeing her actually like make it and do something so supportive for our community and writing roles for us. I also do admire Issa Rae. I don't know if this is not really a shout out for the Latinx, but Issa Rae is exactly who I see myself being with Connect to Into, just how she was like kind of self-made, started from a very, very poor produced YouTube series, like dirt produced. And seeing her on HBO, I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy how she gets to write, produce, and star in her own series. I mean, that's huge. A lot of people are taking into that model. I mean, you have Remy, who's on Hulu and has his own series. Mindy Kaling did the same thing. I feel like this is like the new wave of how series are going to be made. And I definitely want to be a part of that wave.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right. I think and I feel like in the Latinx community, we have a lot of Issa Rays. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons people started talking about her, or she got noticed, was because people showed out for her,
Yeah.
Like people showed out for Awkward Black Girl. People like
Yeah.
watched it, like really got behind when it first was coming out.
Hmm.
So I think you're like that. I think we have a couple other people who are like, they're ready. We just need to like sort of like boost them up a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of us are ready. I mean, America Ferrera found Pentified,
Yeah.
so that's how it got to be like this big show on Netflix. I feel like a lot of us, if we help each other, we can actually make a difference in the film community. But right now, it feels very like everybody. This has at least been like the experience that I've been facing. I feel like a lot of Latinos are kind of like in the mindset of there not being enough room for us, which is true. But if we do support each other, we can help pull each other up. Right now, the Latinos that I've been talking to have been kind of like trying to avoid me, which I'm like, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And I think it's also like the community is still growing, it's still being
Yeah,
connected in an online space too. So I also think a lot of us haven't even heard of each other. I think there's just like a whole new medium of like online content that's being produced by Latinx folks that's still like a little underground that we haven't really tapped into. And I also think
exactly.
Latinx folks are very like right now in the mindset of like a very old school, like
Hmm.
this is the way you come up. And I think we sort of
Yeah,
need to shift that over to like people
yeah,
who are producing stuff now.
yeah. I mean, I think people really sleep on social media. Like right now, I think social media can be a huge advantage to being discovered. I've been lucky enough to just like DM some celebrities out of like, I'm like, if they reply, they reply. And I actually got a few responses, which is cool. So yeah, I think people really do think social media can't be used toward your advantage, and that needs to change, especially just getting out of that old mindset of like how it should be traditionally to get into the industry. There's just so many ways you can't be closed-minded.
So with that, we'll start wrapping up. And where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, so my social media is my Haddon. It's like Manhattan but MY, so MY Haddon. It's kind of a play on for like the city is yours. That's my handle on all social media. Also, you can find me at Connect 212, Connect with a K, 212, or just search up adriansalvador.com. You can find all of my stuff there.
I'm curious what your handle is going to be when you move to LA.
Honestly, I think it will be my Haddon. I don't think I would change my handle until I get famous enough to just have Adrian,
Yeah.
which I've been trying to get for a while.
I feel like you have a lot of competition on that one.
I know, right? We'll see.
My last question, as always, I like to ask my guests to help me title the episode. So the prompt is a blank Latinx writer. You can put as many words as you want. You can mix them all around, just whatever feels true to you, this conversation, your writing. I also use it as a forms of building community. So when someone sees your title, they'll be like, oh, that's like me. I should listen to this. I should reach out to this person.
I guess my title would be Gay JEWTINO from New York City teen drama Latinx writer.
All right.
I don't know. Does that sound smooth?
Listen, these don't, so don't worry about it. I once had someone say their title and be like, does that make any fucking sense? And it sort of does once you see it up and read it out.
Honestly, they're just a bunch of words. So
Yeah.
if you relate to one of these tags, hit
Yeah,
a follow.
exactly. It's all you, though. That's what it tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
So with that, I want to thank you so much for being on the pod. This was such a fun conversation.